goodness. This is when I get on my, it reminds me of Sicario, the end of Sicario, when he told um, that white woman, who was the Emma Blunt, I think that's the actress's name. It might be wrong. I don't know. I know her last name is Blunt. But when Benicio del Toro's character told her, "You're not a wolf," and it takes a wolf to kill a wolf. And God, there's so many things I love about that movie Sicario, the first one. Aside from the fact that, I mean, it is the most anti-feminist movie ever. I mean, that white woman got pushed down, smacked down, used, manipulated so many times throughout that movie, overpowered. I mean, just everything, just to highlight how much of a wolf she was not. I mean, you got to watch the movie. But it's not like any of these other movies where, you get the white woman and she comes through and she's kung fuing everybody all over the place. Like Sicario is literally about, the patriarchal white man world, and how, you got these guys and they go down into Mexico and, they have the backing of the government, and not only do they bend rules, but they break rules, and if some of you all just don't want to accept the ugly realities of the world. I think one of the most crippling things that has ever happened to black people is Christianity and many of these other magical religions. I got a video where I got to address, some of these African horners, and that'll be coming up. But, at the end of the day, y'all ain't ready, man. Y'all ain't ready. Y'all ain't ready to be liberated from white supremacy. At the end of the day, it goes back to what Divine Brown, I got to give her credit because she called it. She was like, what is up with all this good and evil bullshit? This is about winning, right? But black people, we operate within the confines that white supremacy doesn't operate in, where it's all about, well, we know what it's like to be oppressed, so we're not down with oppressing anybody else, right? That's not right. That's not fair. It's all about justice. It's all about the sweet twinkle of Christ and the sweet twinkle of Jesus. I see. This is why I keep saying that black people would be better off operating as though the world were godless. Because you all really truly believe that there is some magical, spiritual, benevolent deity in the sky that, that somehow, like the movies, goodness and righteousness prevail. The fact of the matter is your God doesn't exist or is irrelevant. I know many of you all don't want to believe that, but tell me this, tell me, right? Black people have been suffering for how long? For how long? If we want to start with just the Abrahamic religions, let's go back 2,000 years, right? 2,000 years, right? You had the Arab slave trade that lasted about 1,800 years, I believe, right? Then you had the transatlantic slave trade, right? Then you got black people continuously being exploited and resources taken and everything. Where's your God at? Where's this mighty God? Like, right? Like, why aren't white people being smited all over the place? Lightning bolts, the ground opening up. You know what I'm saying? Fire and brimstone. Like, why aren't they burning right now? Right? We all say white supremacy is evil. What white people will do is it's all evil. Can't you see what they're doing? Right? They don't even think that way. You know what I'm saying? At the end of the day, regardless of even if they feel guilty about it, with the slightest amount, they're not going to sacrifice their advantage in the name of righteousness or justice or Christianity or the sweet twinkle of Christ or anything. You all are sitting around waiting for a freaking pipe dream. You're waiting for somehow, I mean, like how long does this over the course of generations? How long does this go on for? Okay. Where black people just continuously suffer, and your children suffer, and your children's children suffer, and you just hold on to this idea that at some point God is going to do all the evil shit to white people that what you won't do, right? At the end of the day, other groups, especially when we're talking about white supremacy, they take food out of the mouths of their children, of your children. Excuse me, they take food out of the mouths of your children and put food in the mouths of their children. It's survival of the fittest. That is the ugly reality of this world. I wish it wasn't like that. I wish we could all come together and we're all God's children and it's just, the sweet twinkle of Christ and like those fucking, Jesus, murals and shit that white people paint and everything else like that, where they got, the Native American child and the black child and the Chinese child and the Arab child and all these different children sitting on fucking white Jesus's lap in a meadow somewhere with flowers going all the way to the horizon, and there's snow-peaked mountains and a little lamb that's just sitting there, and there's birds in the trees just chilling, like they're listening and overlooking the conversation as though they speak English, because white Jesus is going to sit there and tell them about who knows what. It's not the world that we live in. So y'all want to find some righteous and justice. So you're not concerned with winning by any means necessary. Notice what Malcolm X said, by any means necessary. But the majority of you all are not by any means necessary black people. Right? You want to counter white supremacy in the right way. You want to counter white supremacy, through justice. You've allowed, white people don't even operate like that. Like, they set up rules that you follow, but they don't even follow. You're never going to win that way. I'm not saying that you have to announce all the bullshit that you're doing. You know what I mean? But all this back and forth that constantly goes on, like you see the injustice. What do white people do? They make a false equivalence. That's what they do. They make a false equivalence. You're not going to be able to intellectualize your way and win, some sort of argument with white supremacy, where white supremacy is going to be like, okay, we're going to stop. You logically won the argument. That's about as futile as arguing with women. This is about power. White supremacy is about power and control, and they don't care whether you're disadvantaged. They don't care whether you're losing or whether you're suffering or whether you're in last place. They don't care. They're not going to sacrifice their advantage in the name of righteousness and justice so that you have a seat at the table or so that there's some fairness. This game, this act of surviving on this planet is brutal and it's savage. And you either have to be brutal and savage yourself, or you have to, at the very least, be able to stop and defend yourself from the incursion of any other group. It's not about being what's fair. What Russia and China are doing with manipulating the media, with the way that they control the news, like Newsbreak. Like, Newsbreak is the Chinese, you ever seen Newsbreak? You got the app Newsbreak on your phone? Most of you do. Okay, Newsbreak is run by the Chinese, but run by Zheng He or Zheng Hao, however you say his name, Chinese dude. And when you look at all the articles that come out of Newsbreak, they're all triggering. 1 minute they're pandering to cops, next minute they're pandering to Black Lives Matter, next minute they're pandering to white people, making white people sound like they're the victim, right? All this stuff comes up, and it creates division. China knows this, it's psychological warfare. Russia knows this, it's psychological warfare. Go and watch Russia TV and you'll see, how most of the stuff that they put up there is triggering. It's designed to be that way because if you don't know, by American law, no foreign entity can control a major news network. But because of social media and the phones and apps and all that other stuff, other countries can influence American politics and American reasoning and American sensibilities and everything else because of apps on phones. Why do you think China doesn't allow for there to be Facebook and Google and whatever else social media that we have in America not be in China? Because they don't want outside influences. This isn't about being fair. This is about winning, God damn it. And y'all running around, trying to, find some moral righteous way to win and defeat white supremacy. Somehow you're going to shame white people into doing the right thing. Okay, well, what happens when you come across white people that ain't going to do the right thing? They don't give a fuck. They're trying to maintain their position of power by any means necessary. You know what I'm saying? They don't care. It's like what I said about white women. They always try to play the victim and shit like that, and try to act like, oh, it's the white male capitalist patriarchy. When white men were knocking African slaves over in Africa and then bringing the slaves over, and then you were that white woman living in the big house in the antebellum South, it wasn't like white women were like, oh no, return these Victorian diamonds. I know where you got those blood diamonds from. You know what I'm saying? They were like, well, okay. And they took it, and they were sitting up there with Leonardo DiCaprio and freaking Django and shit like that, just enjoying the lifestyle. They were enjoying that shit, which is why, if many of you all remember what happened to the white woman that was in Django blew her away. You see, people forget that because she like got shot and then like somehow like her body just flew across the room, out of the room. But no, Django killed her. But the movie did it, as all white media does. They always do a way of if the white woman's going to get it, she's not going to get it in a graphic way. Meanwhile, we got to watch and look at, Kerry Washington in the hot box. I mean, this is what it is. I mean, point blank, period. And again, when you talk about patriarchy and you talk about having a black community, right? I'm not saying that the idea is black people are going to go out here and re-enslave white people or some shit like that, right? Like, no. But at the end of the day, you got to recognize that in your black patriarchy, to put your community first, right? It's going to be about you putting yourself first. And not giving a fuck about what's going on with white people and what's going on with that. Like, I stopped giving money to homeless white people. You know why? Because I'm like, you're white. Like, this is your system. I'm a black man. Why am I giving you money? Oh, it's so unfortunate that you were an alcoholic and you're out here on the streets and that you were doing, fentanyl-laced heroin and all that other shit. But you're fucking white. This whole system is yours. You're a member of the dominant society. If you fuck up and fail as a white man in this society, you're just a fuck up. Point blank, period. You're just a fuck up. So why am I taking money out of my pocket? I'm like, nah, that motherfucker good. You good. That's a waste of a perfectly good white boy right there. That's how I view the shit. You see? Black people don't owe white people a motherfucking thing. White people owe black people. Now, are white people going to give it? Are white people going to, reparations for slavery? You see all the resistance to that shit. You know what I'm saying? Like at the end of the day, this is one of those Chronicles of Riddick, you keep what you kill type of situations. Power is taken. It is not given. And again, y'all ain't ready for that. Y'all out here still believing that's all about righteousness and justice and that somehow white people want to meet us 50-50 and on fair ground and that we can make a more fair and equitable world. But you see all the resistance to the shit. I was talking to somebody the other day and they said they were telling me, because they know how I think. And they were just like, what your problem is? And I said, what? They were like, look, racism, you're not going to change people. They were pointing out to me, they were like, they deal with people like the Prime Directive in Star Wars. That's how they deal with the situations, like the Prime Directive. And they were pointing out to me, you can't change people. People who are, he was like, when racism is going to end? When all those people that were racist die. When all those people that were on what they were on fucking die. And the younger people, hopefully they'll be more open-minded. But there's still certain constants in the world. Whether it's racism or nationalism, this is one of the reasons why, notice that they're coming out with all this stuff about aliens and the aliens are here and the Pentagon is saying we have unidentified flying objects and everything else. I've already thought about and contemplated this. With the interventionary evolution and all the stuff that you hear from the Abrahamic religions, where possibly, aliens trying to teach humanity something, like in the movie Prometheus and shit like that, but it didn't work out, so they left and they bounced, or whatever, or we're just being observed, or they're waiting for us to get to a certain particular point. There's certain people that are running around talking about aliens, already talking about that shit, talking about that we're illogical and we're irrational, and it's very true. We're not ready to be a part of. We don't even get along as human beings on this planet alone. How the hell would you be incorporated into some, interstellar group? And you got to deal with, you can't even handle skin color. You know what I mean? Or slight variations in features and hair textures. And yet somehow we're supposed to be incorporated into some interstellar society where you can have some, aliens that look like bugs and freaking got tentacles and octopus, multiple limbs and just shit that you couldn't even fathom, and grays and lizard people and all other type of shit. You can't even handle dealing with another human being that simply has a different phenotype because he lives on the other side of the fucking planet. So how's that shit gonna work? How are we supposed to be incorporated in that? Right? I've always looked at alien civilizations like obviously they've had to get past all their wars, because if they have the technology to travel across the galaxy or in a blink of an eye or whatever, then clearly they have the technology to destroy each other and destroy whole solar systems and all that other shit. So war is like not an option at that point. You know what I mean? Otherwise, you're just walking around the galaxy like the fucking Silver Surfer and shit, and finding planets, to consume and whatnot. Either that or you end up being the aliens like in Independence Day, which didn't make any sense. Like, nigga, if you got all that technology and whatnot, why don't you just make a Dyson sphere? Why you got to go to planets that have habitable life and then take the iron core from the planet and do what you want to do with that? Why not go to a different planet that also has an iron core? There's other planets that got iron cores and shit. Why would you go to the habitable one? Right? In my opinion, you're never going to get anywhere as a civilization and technology wise if you're not benevolent. You're going to destroy each other, right? But that's a whole philosophical different conversation. I could make a whole different video that there's probably plenty of nerd videos on YouTube talking about that very thing. But in terms of where black people are, and my priority being black people and dealing with white supremacy, you're going to have to be ruthless. And again, you don't got to come on the internet and broadcast and tell everybody what you plan on doing and all this other shit. You know what I mean? But, at the end of the day, it's like you all really think that, that somehow we can chain white people into doing the right thing. They're not going to do the right thing. And even still, if white people, let's say fuck it, white people are hostile, they're savage like that. That's just how they are, right? Which is why you got some black people running around and always screaming the white people are the devil and everything else like that. Fuck it, let's go with that. They're evil, that's what they do, and all that other stuff. Okay, how are you going to counter that? We're going to counter that by being nice? We're going to counter that by being polite? We're going to counter that by not operating in the same manner? You already know they're hostile, right? See, again, here comes the Christianity. No, what you must do is you must challenge the hate of white people and white supremacy with love. Love your enemy. That's exactly what they want you to do. Y'all ain't ready to go to war. Period. All black people are going to do is every couple of months, some white people are going to do some fucked up shit. And black people are going to say, woe is us, all this bullshit, or you're going to get some black people that are going to go out here and get their ass killed because they think that simply being loud is the way that you handle white people being violent towards black people. Just simply being loud. They don't prepare for shit to go down. They're not even in a position to saber rattle. They don't support the Second Amendment or support anything that gives black people access to firearms for as long as possible if you want to argue that white supremacy is a threat. But I'm saying we also have threats within the black community that are also not being addressed. And that's a whole nother conversation where it's like seemingly black people just refuse to be criticized. They don't want to be criticized. We got a whole bunch of problems that exist. And yes, many of those problems were most certainly facilitated by white people, especially all the poverty-based problems. But yet and still, we got black people that, they work against the collective interest of black people. So we got enemies on two fronts. You know what I mean? But y'all running around with the sweet twinkle of Christ in your bosom and the buttery goodness of the Lord and the Most High and all this other shit. You ain't ready, nigga. You ain't fucking ready. You know what I'm saying? That's one thing I'll give street dudes. You know what I'm saying? Is that, there's action behind their words. When they have a problem, they deal with it. But when it comes to all you so-called good people with this sweet twinkle of Christ in your bosom, y'all ain't gonna do shit. Y'all ain't gonna do shit. You're so concerned about what white people are doing and how wrong it is. Oh, it's so wrong. And okay, well, if we're going to counter that, we need to do the same thing. We need to be equally as effective. If white supremacy is doing white supremacy and I'm in Wakanda and whatnot, oh yeah. We're gonna have some European sanctions on some European goods and shit like that. Oh yeah. It's not going to be fair. Just like when you go to Dubai, it's not fair. The Arab Emiratis are only 10% of the population, but yet the laws are geared and tailored to where no matter what goes down, they get the benefit of the doubt. That's how that shit is set up. In the Philippines, foreigners can't even buy land in the Philippines. You got to be Filipino to buy land in Manila. You see, in China, they don't even let anybody else become Chinese citizens. That's why that Sir Pence's or whatever his name is, the two white guys that like to ride around China on their bicycles and shit like that, even though they're no longer in China, but they speak fluent Mandarin and whatnot. But that's why they married Asian women and everything. Not allowed to be an Asian citizen or Chinese citizen. Is that fair? It's not about fairness. But y'all don't get that. Y'all want to sit there and say, oh, they's racist. And see, the whole issue with that is you're so concerned as a black person in not being racist yourself that not being racist as a black person is such a priority that you will choose to not be racist over actually having power. Because if you had power, then you could actually be racist. But your issue is you don't want to be racist in theory, racist in concept. Because somehow, if you can somehow operate, it's like you're trying to show white people how white people could do things without being racist. Well, white people, you could actually have an intact community without being racist. Okay, show it to me. Show me where black people can have an intact, thriving black community without being racist towards white people or any other group and practice group economics. Show me how we can keep wealth in the black community and have it circulating, 50 to 100 times and whatnot without acting like the Chinese when they got their Chinatowns, or without acting like the Italian community when they got their little Italian neighborhoods and their little Italy, without acting like, the little Cubas and the little Havanas and shit. Call it what you will. There's racism baked into that. See, and then what some of you all are concerned about is you're concerned about, this sort of, vicious, violent, brutal aspects of racism and whatnot. Like, well, yeah, that doesn't mean just because practicing group economics doesn't mean we're going in there knocking white people over the head. OK, fine. I'll give you that. But see, there's a belief. The reason why white people do a lot of the savage shit that they do is, number one, fear of loss, fear of losing power and control and domination. And the second thing is their language, their ideology, the religion of white supremacy teaches them that, they are superior, that everybody else is inferior. You see, and many of the things that you see that we consider, white love, intrinsic white love, is not intrinsic white love. It's based off of their concept and their belief that they are the top dog. That they're the sun and everybody else is just the planets that orbit around them. There's a whole belief system that goes into how they operate and how they function, which is why it's essentially so easy for, white leaders and whatnot to keep white people on code with dog whistles. Even white people that are at the bottom rung of the American capitalistic classic society. Think about it. Again, going back to what Tim Wines pointed out. How in the hell did a bunch of white slave owners that owned the land, had all the resources, disproportionate amount of resources, just like in Django, how did they convince poor, have nothing, couldn't even vote most of the time because they didn't own land? How did they convince a bunch of poor, have nothing in their bank account, not a pot to piss in, white Southerners to fight to keep their slaves, which were the very thing that kept those white Southerners poor and out of a job and everything else, right? Because right? Like, think about it, right? What's the issue today? We need to build a wall. Why? Because the Mexicans are coming and stealing our jobs, even though we know most white people don't want to work those jobs. Mexicans are stealing our jobs, right? And then I say, well, why don't you address the white men that are hiring them? Because they're only coming here for jobs. Well, if the white men that are hiring them would stop hiring them, then maybe they would stop coming. But notice the poor white men never go after the white men that actually hire them because they're not going to attack and charge other white men with a crime. Instead, they direct all their anger at the Mexicans. Right? But they're like, build a wall because these Mexicans are stealing our jobs. Right? But yet, poor, working class white men still went off and fought to keep masses slaves. Think about that. Marinate on that. Like if today's white men are on some build a wall shit, then why weren't the white men of the past, why weren't they on some, we need to get rid of slavery and force them to hire us? Because I'm saying what the Mexicans are being paid is only a step up above what the slaves were not being paid. Right? I mean, it can't be any better of a situation for the white elites than to have slaves rather than to have cheap labor. Slaves are better than cheap labor. Right? But yet, white men, Civil War, went off and fought and died and whatnot, right? To, one, preserve the Union for the Northerners, and then, B, to maintain slavery in the South for the Southerners. So you got to think about the ideology of where the whole religion of white supremacy that has poor and working class whites working against their own socioeconomic interests within their own capitalist system. That's a hell of a brainwashing right there. To where whiteness is so important, or the idea of maintaining this whole concept of whiteness is so important that white people don't even see their own class. They don't even recognize that they're at the bottom. White guys running around, ain't got a pot to piss in. Well, at least I'm not a nigger. I'm white. Yeah, it's okay to be white. Yeah, Valhalla. Odin. He's not even Scandinavian. He doesn't even have a Scandinavian background. Is telling you about Odin and all these sort of Nordic gods and shit to try to reestablish the sense of whiteness. Got a southern accent telling me about Odin and shit. You got to think about that. You're in a hostile environment. You're going to have to be hostile in your response to hostility, not passive. See, the problem is a lot of you all let white people guilt you into shit when they come up and they come through with their false equivalencies. You let them guilt you into shit. Like I told you, 1 minute, see, black people, you need to handle your own responsibilities, personal responsibility, nigger. You need to have your own businesses and this, that, and the third, as opposed to, being a mooch and always trying to ask the white man for handouts. Soon as black people go off and set up their own businesses, oh, this looks like reverse racism to me. Oh, look at you. You got all black supermarkets, and now you got all black stores, and you got all black insurance companies and all black banks. That seems pretty racist to me. Right? Like, wasn't that what you were doing? Right? I mean, if you were sharing, if America was all inclusive, then maybe we wouldn't have to have our own shit like that. But the reality is, it's not like that. It's tribal as fuck. Right? You know, some of y'all run around, y'all be grabbing the Bible and everything else. Bible's the most racist, tribalistic book that there is. There were tribes, and this tribe didn't fuck with that tribe. And God ordered this tribe to do this for this tribe's best interests. You got Jewish people running around talking about we're God's chosen people. I mean, you don't get any more tribal and elite than that. At the end of the day, if black people are going to get out of their current position relative to everybody else, black people are going to have to focus on themselves and make themselves a priority. Period. The irony of how close this is to the queen of colorism and her page and trying to tell dark-skinned women to specifically focus on the betterment of dark-skinned women and their image. The parallel is insane because it's the exact same thing. You can't be pro-black and then not put blackness first. Plain and simple. And y'all whining, trying to shame white people about what they're doing. As far as I'm concerned, just like with the brother that I'm talking to about the Liam Neeson shit, I'm like, hey, he's in other words, the instinct that he had, the idea of responding, and because his friend got raped and he wanted to attack a black person or whatever, you know what I mean? That's him staying on code. You can call it racist. You can be all upset about it and whatnot. But the problem is we don't respond like that across the board when it comes to things, educationally, financially, in terms of our own policing. You know what I'm saying? About, we need to stop these white police. How come we don't have armies of black men saying, you know what, I'm going to be a police officer so I can police my own community and basically push out all these white police officers so that you have black communities that are policed by majority black men and white communities that are policed by whites. Because they won't tolerate us policing their communities, but we're supposed to tolerate them policing ours. If it's such a problem, right, we should see scores and scores of black men lining up to become police officers to police their own communities. But no, instead, what you want is you want them to change their behavior, which they don't have to do. They got all the power. They don't have to change it. You're always going to be subject to their bullshit if you got to, go to them and, I need you to change your behavior and everything, because you won't go out there and handle it yourself. You won't police your own communities yourself. You want to sit there and talk about, well, you should know, and this, that, and the third, you should be able to respond. Okay, why don't you show them how to do it? Stop arguing with them and talking about them doing it. You should show. I haven't heard not one aspect. Everybody's talking about, we need police reform. We need to defund the police. We need to do this. I haven't heard not one brother talk about how, other than there was I think he was the police chief in Chicago. Okay. And then there was, did he go down to Louisiana? In any event, or I think he was in Texas. The police chief, he wears glasses and bald head guy. But anyway, he's the only one that I saw that was saying, we need more black police officers. And when you look at the numbers statistically, there are black police officers like unicorns. Plain and simple. There aren't enough black police officers. Why is it white people, they want to be police officers so bad, right? But black people, they don't want to be police officers. Right? Could it be because we don't actually have communities? We just have areas of poverty where black people reside, and they don't even own the buildings in which they're living in. It's like black people are on invisible reservations. You see? Which it wasn't that way during, Jim Crow and segregation, where black people were forced to have their own shit. And black people, I hear all this stuff about, things are better than what they were. The only reason why black people wanted to integrate is because white people had better shit. But there were pockets of black communities that had it going on, like Tulsa and Rosewood and Elaine, Arkansas. These places had it going on, and they had their own shit. You know, white people went in there. The white people didn't go. Notice we got ghettos all over America. White people don't go into the ghettos and burn shit down. They only go into when black people had shit in the 1920s and they were jealous and they were feeling some type of way because black people back then were doing everything that I'm saying should be done right now. But y'all want to sit around and waste another 100 years bumping gums with white people about their fucked up behavior and their nasty interactions with us and try to tell them that they need to stop doing what they've been doing? They're not going to stop doing what they've been doing. And on top of that, you're not going to make them, Mr. I don't want to exercise my Second Amendment rights and whatnot. At least Grandmaster Jay had the right orientation when it came to that. You see? But yet we don't even know how to strategically change the laws and vote in a particular way to say, nope, you're not going to do that. You're not going to do this. We still go out here and vote for the Democratic. So right off top, black people are not ready to do anything because you haven't even gotten off of voting for Joe Biden and the Hillary Clinton and the fucking Democratic. You haven't even gotten off of that. So y'all can spare me with all this talk about, shaming white people into submission. It's not going to happen. You got to learn how to do for self. You got to learn how to think for self. You got to learn how to do what is in your collective best interest. And then about what's going on with them. All the white kids are shooting up white schools. And so the fuck what? Ain't been a mass shooting in a predominantly black school ever. That is not our problem. But yet, every time I turn on CNN and MSNBC, there's some fat black woman sitting up there talking about we need gun control because gun control is a problem because of mass shooters. I'm like, we don't have a mass shooter problem. We got a socioeconomic problem because of the lack of opportunities and deindustrialization of America and mass incarceration and the whole way the job system is set up. Oh, you got a felony. I can't hire you. So, I guess we're just going to sit here and wonder why there's recidivism. Right. I don't see black people trying to pass policies talking about if you have a nonviolent felony, it shouldn't even be able to be background checked. So that brothers can go out here and get a job and take care of their families and their community. You know what I'm saying? Like there's so many ways in which black people could vote for policies to empower themselves, but they don't do it. And they don't know how to sit out one election, sit on their hand and say, you know what? Again, y'all Democrats, y'all ain't going to win unless you get our vote. There's power in that, but we don't even know how to turn that around. Democrats cannot win without the black vote. If you want to talk about coming up with a third party, then have that conversation. But Democrats cannot win without the black vote. But yet, since black people are just going to go out there with all of their feelings and emotions and continue to vote the same way without making any demands, and then not only that, after your demands are not met, even if you made demands, you have no way of holding them accountable because you're just going to vote for them again in the next 4 years. You know what I'm saying? Like it should be no wonder why, none of this is turning around. Then why we can't do anything. Because y'all ain't ready. Our minds are messed up. The whole way we think about shit is messed. It's all emotions. It's just all emotions and feelings and emotions and emotions and emotions and emotions and emotions. There's nothing tactical. There's nothing strategic about anything we do. It's just emotions. And y'all sit there and you let the fucking white media that we don't control sit there and trigger you with bullshit to try to convince you to vote for them in the next fucking 4 years. Yeah, the same people that are running around on 1 minute, they're saying, oh, the police are out here shooting black people. Then the next minute, they're throwing you under the bus talking about how the black people are out here attacking the Asians. They're just as racist as they claim white people to be. I guess we don't have to address white supremacy then. Because clearly, it's not about, white supremacy when black people, they're white supremacists themselves. I mean, look at how they treat Asians, right? And they go and find some homeless black person that's off of his meds and attacks an Asian person and then say it's a hate crime. Anyway, save this video because I wouldn't be surprised if YouTube tried to flag it and say, oh, he's speaking too much truth. We have to shut him down. Oh, hate speech, hate speech. Anyway, that's my video. SWP out.